The scariest coincidences caught on camera. In Pennsylvania, a body was found by the police in a river while reporters surrounded the area trying to figure out what was happening. One of the reporters interviewed a man named Matthew that lived by the area. When she asked him about the situation, he seemed really surprised and said that he had no idea what had happened. He said it was sad and a good place to hide a body. A few hours later, the police discovered that the body was Matthew's mother. He was later arrested after the police found out that he was in possession of the same tarp that the body was wrapped up in. He was then sentenced to 14 years in prison. The event that started World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand from Austria, which took place when he was being driven away in a limousine. The most disturbing coincidence was the license plate. The license plate number was A111118, which could also be read as November 11th, 1918, which is the date that World War I was agreed on. These simple objects had a secret from you in plain sight. The marks on the side of coins haven't always been there. In the 18th century, people were saving coins to make new ones, which is clearly illegal. So to stop this, they began engraving the sides to prevent them from being manipulated, which worked. The ring on cans lets people put their cigarettes there, but also if you have a painting that's fallen, because one of the hooks detached, you can screw the ring into the painting and hang it again. Water bottles can be used to create a small greenhouse. Just cut the bottom and you can watch the seed grow. The Orbit chewing gum has a secret hidden in the logo. The round shape of the O has two colors. The light one represents day and the dark one represents night, just like our planet orbiting the sun. And finally, if you place garlic cloves in the microwave for 10 seconds, the husk will separate so you don't have to peel it with your hands. He built a secret home in the corner of the mall and lived there for 4 years before being discovered. While Providence Place Mall was under construction, Michael Townsend, who's an American artist, was running around the site when he noticed a section that made no sense. It was an opening between two walls that led to a space too small to be a store and too angular to be part of the parking lot. But he continued on his run. 4 years later, him and his friends were forced to leave the place that they were living because it was going to be destroyed and replaced with a parking lot. Because of this, he got an idea and remembered the space that he had seen years ago. That's when him and his friends got to work and cleaned up the space. They decorated it and took electricity from the mall for a TV and video games. The only thing they didn't have is a bathroom, but they were caught 4 years later, and they all went to trial for trespassing and many other charges, but the judge made the decision to let them go on probation. 3 times Google Maps saved lives. In 2016, 3 sailors were shipwrecked and had to swim to a deserted island. They had the idea to write the word help in the sand with rocks and palm leaves. After 3 days, a person using Google Satellite saw the word, and they were finally rescued by the US Navy. In 2017, Austin Bohannon went hiking, but he soon realized that he was lost. He hiked through the forest for 11 days. That's when he thought he could maybe get a GPS signal. So he tried Google Maps and it worked, and he followed it to a town, where he went to a hospital and was treated for exhaustion and dehydration. And finally, in 2006, David Lee disappeared with his car. But then in 2017, someone was searching for a pond on Google Maps when they seen something unusual. It was David's car submerged into the pond with him still in it. Unfortunately, in this case, Google Maps didn't save a life, but it was able to give closure to the family that was still looking for him. This boy lived in a bubble for 18 years. Jimmy Livingston was born with no immunity, so he had to be kept isolated. His parents made him a plastic bubble that he couldn't get out of, and they could only touch him with gloves. When he was 16, he was attracted to his neighbor Chloe, who he could see through his window. When his overprotected mom found out about this, she warned him that if he touched her, he would die. As the years went on, Jimmy and Chloe became friends. Until one day, Chloe gave him news that left him really sad. She would be leaving soon to marry her fiance at Niagara Falls. Since Jimmy was in love with her, he decided to make a suit, so he could go outside and interrupt the wedding. A few days later, he arrived just in time to interrupt the wedding. Then he confessed his love for Chloe and got out of the suit and kissed her. His mother arrived just in time to see him and told everybody the truth. Jimmy was perfectly fine. She was just holding him captive to keep him away from the rest of the world. In the end, Jimmy forgives his mother and ends up marrying Chloe. 5 People Who Beat the System Part 5. At this resort, you're not allowed to have drinks by the pool, so they made a massive straw and left the drink on their balcony. This guy said his name was Mark, spelled with a C, so instead of changing the K to a C, they changed the M to a C. The teacher told them they could only have a one-sided cheat sheet, so this student taped the paper to make both sides one side. This guy's girlfriend told him to wear a plain tie, so he sent her this picture of a tie with planes. Now before I show you the smartest one, I found a really addicting app that lets you create games to play with your friends, and also play millions of other games created by other players. Just press a button on my profile to get it. Finally, this town wasn't allowed to have a statue so close to the road, so they put a flag in it to make it a flagpole. Scammers who got caught in the act. In China, people trying to scam drivers is common. In this video, a man was driving down a narrow road when suddenly a lady walked into the middle of the road and laid down, and then waits for the vehicle to get close to her so she pretends that she's been hit. But the driver put the car in reverse, then the lady got off the ground and tried to dent the front of the vehicle then lay back down. If the man didn't have the dash cam, they may have thought he actually hit her. In this video, a man's driving along when suddenly a car pulls out in front of him and zigzags to try and cause a minor collision. The car then stops and a group of men get out, blocking the driver from continuing. The way the scam works is the men try and get the guy's insurance details so they can claim money from the company for supposedly being hit. But when the driver tells them that they're being recorded, they just walk away and try and find their next victim. How KFC was made from a gas station recipe. When Harlan Sanders was 6 years old, his father passed away, so his mother had to work while he took care of his siblings. In 1930, he got offered a job at the Shell oil company to manage a gas station. He quickly got the idea to make more money by making food for drivers passing through the gas station. His food, especially his fried chicken, became very famous. He came up with a technique to reduce the cooking time of the chicken, and also experimented with different spices until he got the flavor that he wanted. He then called it the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. In 1950, he had to sell his place because of the construction of a new highway which decreased his customers, which decreased his sales, leaving him in debt. After this, he got the great idea to create the franchise Kentucky Fried Chicken. He drove around the country selling his recipe and preparation technique to different companies in exchange for 4 cents per one chicken sold. By 1963, there were more than 600 franchises throughout United States and Canada. And finally, when he was 73 years old, he sold his franchise to an investment group for what would be over $14 million today. The 5 most illegal products on Pawn Stars. Number 1. An antique gun desk. This type of weapon is classed as a novelty weapon because of its low capacity, rarity, and difficulty in finding ammunition. But the one showed on the TV show had 1 round of ammunition left in it. And to make it legal, you either have to deactivate the device or make it unusable. Number 2. A turtle shell guitar. The shells of turtles are made of 60 interconnected bones. They're so strong that they started making guitars out of them until it was illegal. Number 3. A German spy camera. It was the first spy camera manufactured by the Minox company and was designed by Walter Zapp in 1936. Number 4. Penn State University orange bowl ring. Penn State items are highly wanted, but in this case the engraving was erased, making it illegal to buy and sell. And number 5. A Tyrian shekel coin. Tyre was the most important city in Phoenicia, which is now southern Lebanon. Its coins were given out from 130 BC to 70 AD, and apparently the one taken to the show was stolen. Here's how they caught Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was an American serial killer. He used his ability to talk in a polite manner to pass off as a quiet guy. Although the police had witnesses saying they seen a man with his characteristics in the same places where a woman had gone missing, they didn't find a killer. But then a sketch of Ted Bundy was released, and after this, the police received tons of calls saying they identified the killer. And finally, in 1975, the police arrested Ted for a traffic violation. He raised the police's suspicion when he wanted to leave, but they stopped him, and when they checked his car, they found questionable objects like crowbars, ski masks with holes for the eyes, handcuffs, and a lot more. He was then arrested a year later for an attempted kidnapping and sentenced to 15 years in prison. And months later, he was charged with the murder of Karen Campbell. In prison, he wasn't tied up, so he jumped out of the window of a library and escaped. He was captured a week later, but within months, he escaped again. He committed more murders both times he escaped, including a 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach. In 1979, he went on trial for the murders he committed at a sorority house. He was convicted and sentenced to death in the electric chair. After a bunch of appeals, he was electrocuted in 1989 and pronounced dead. But before his execution, he confessed to a bunch of murders, and it's believed that he may have committed over 50.